This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. We are earthbound today, unfortunately, but we're still going to take a bit of a journey through distinctive storytelling, starting with what's happening in our Eastern Hemisphere. China has been seeing its largest surge of COVID cases since 2020. In response, the government has enacted similar strict citywide lockdowns again. And when I say lockdowns, I mean completely locked down. In many cases, that means not being able to leave the house at all or even get food or supplies. Public transport is shut down, and even hospitals may be closed to non-COVID patients. These citywide shutdowns are the core of China's zero COVID approach, meaning zero active cases and zero new cases every day. The policy locks down full cities at a time, with regular intensive testing, tracing, and isolating of anyone who tests positive. But things have taken a turn for the worse for the 26 million people in Shanghai, the country's most populous city. Residents were told the lockdown would be about 4 days, so few were prepared for a shutdown that's now lasted over a month. Since late March, tensions between residents and government officials have been quickly escalating. What's more, the ripple effects will be felt throughout the country and even across the globe. We called up NPR's Emily Fang, who's based in Beijing, to give us a detailed update.
The problem that we're seeing now is Omicron, BA2, these variants that spread super quickly. And so it's challenging even the Chinese model because they're not able to test quickly enough. There's been an overwhelming and sustained critical response to this lockdown. And to understand that, it's because Shanghai is one of the richest and most cosmopolitan cities. So for the last 2 years, even as other cities were getting locked down, sometimes irrationally so, and struggling to deal with new cases, Shanghai was much more flexible.
In early April, Shanghai was reporting more than 73,000 new cases of COVID since the resurgence of the Omicron variant, a steep rise that hasn't been seen in China since the early pandemic. And so it soon became the ultimate testing ground for the zero COVID approach. The policy puts strict limits on public transportation and travel in and out of the city. Non-essential businesses are closed, and most vehicles are banned from the streets. Government healthcare workers and volunteers conduct regular testing, and if residents test positive, residents will be taken to state-built temporary quarantine facilities, whether they choose to or not. And the lockdown has also created other urgent problems for residents stuck at home.
我需要一些政府层面给到我一些科学合理的判断，而不是每天我都是在看着无限新增的人数。
その買い物のサイトにアクセスが殺到するんで、まさにそのページがもう全然更新されない。そういう状態が本当続いて、本当に自分もこのまま食べ物を手に入れられないんじゃないかっていう感じになったりして。
So a lot of people are still having issues getting food, medicine that they need each day. Hospitals have been closed to non-COVID patients. So you can imagine there have been a lot of excess deaths linked to diseases other than COVID that have happened because of the lockdown.
The fallout was immediate. Some troubling scenes began appearing online showing the severity of the lockdown measures, as well as rising tension and resistance from Shanghai residents.
5分钟前头，叫我没几个了，现在突然之间，所有人都叫了。
This video of residents shouting out their windows went viral in early April, and it's not the only one. Here, robot dogs can be heard passing on reminders to stay inside, wash your hands, and check your temperature. And in this video, a drone was seen flying by apartment buildings where residents were singing in protest. Alice Su of The Economist translated the drone's message as, "Please comply with COVID restrictions. Control your soul's desire for freedom. Do not open the window or sing." And despite censorship efforts from the Chinese government, many photos and videos of residents resisting officials have made their way online as well.
When it comes to actual organic content that is getting censored, I'm talking about photos that people are posting of protest signs that are being hung up all around Shanghai, photos of people getting tested, videos of people having their doors broken down or COVID officials coming into their homes to take them away to central quarantine. Personally, I've run up against a lot of people who we've been trying to interview who have said, we're happy to do interviews. We want the world to know what we're going through, but we won't talk to foreign media because we We don't think that will help our situation. It will only hurt us. It'll get us in trouble with the police, and it also invites nationalists online to attack us.
As the anger spread online, China's government censors struggled to keep up with complaints on social media, censoring hashtags like Shanghai needs food that residents were using to call for food delivery. As the COVID surge continues, the restrictions are only ramping up. Authorities are adding measures like electronic door alarms to keep those infected inside, or forcibly evacuating households to disinfect homes. Now, all eyes turn to President Xi Jinping, the political face of the zero COVID policy, to see how China moves forward. Even though vaccination rates are high overall, the Chinese vaccines have proven to be less effective than mRNA vaccines, especially against variants. Distribution has also been unequal across the country and across age groups. Rather than dialing back on lockdowns, it seems the government is actually doubling down.
With Shanghai, and before that in Hong Kong, there was also a massive outbreak because of a slight relaxation in standards. I think you're going to see Chinese policymakers be more wary of adopting any kind of relaxation because they're worried that that could lead to an explosion of cases that are completely uncontrollable. Zero COVID still has enormous public support in China. And the reason for that is because more people enjoyed the benefits than had to suffer the consequences. But with these infections, we're starting to see more and more people have to live under some kind of lockdown control. So Shanghai could be a tipping point in which the costs start to outweigh the benefits of zero COVID.
Shanghai has the largest GDP of all Chinese cities and the third largest stock market in the world by value of the companies traded. It's also responsible for much of China's trade with the rest of the world. Its port is the busiest in the world for container traffic, handling 4 times the size as the port of Los Angeles. So it's easy to see why some are worried about how this lockdown is going to disrupt trade on a global scale. Patrick Falk is joining us from Beijing to tell us more about the economic repercussions we might see from this lockdown.
Well, China's successful handling of the initial phase of the COVID-19 pandemic made it the only major economy in the world to avoid a deep contraction. But now there are an estimated 400 million people in this country, at least under a partial form of lockdown. And the government is showing no signs of moving away from its zero COVID strategy. As one report put it, the economic outlook ranges from bad to really bad. There are roadblocks that have been set up all across China to curb the spread of the virus. Activity at ports has plummeted, wreaking havoc on global supply chains. Remember, China's economy relies heavily on consumption and exports, and there are some very dangerous signs there. Economists have predicted that as much as 50% of the country's total output may be affected. At the recently concluded 2 sessions, the parliamentary sessions here in Beijing, the government predicted economic growth of 5.5%, but most economists agree that that target isn't achievable. But for the time being, the situation is still incredibly uncertain, and it's too hard to predict just where economic growth might end up by the end of this year.